Hello and welcome to another episode of the Moonee Valley Voices podcast, the local podcast where we shine a light on some of the great people doing wonderful things in the Moonee Valley community. And today I'm delighted to be joined by Justin and John, who are members of SES Essendon, and we're going to have a great chat today about all things SES Essendon and obviously your connection to the Moonee Valley as well. So welcome along, guys. Thanks for coming.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Yeah, thanks for the invite.
Nah, too easy. Well, you reached out to me, so thank you for
That's
being
right.
proactive. Nah, very good. Well, Justin, we'll start with you. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your connections to the Moonee Valley? And
Look, Moonee Valley, born here, grew up around here. So primary school at St. Teresa's,
Yep.
And high school at St. Bernard's.
Oh, all right.
Mum and dad had a shoe shop in Killer Road, Essendon Killer Road, Nidri for 20 plus years, next to Rita's Cake Shop for all your listeners out there who remember the good old days, and had strong family connections through Killer Road. So my uncle owned the video shop, Movie Land, on the corner there, and just love and just grew up in the area. So just born and bred and work locally all my life.
Yeah. Did some real estate as well?
Yeah, real estate. Yeah, so started off my career with Nelson Alexander under Milo Raznick in real estate, and sold houses, rented houses, all for about 10 years in the local area.
Fantastic. And John, I understand you came to the area a little bit later, but
Yeah.
talk to us about, I guess, where you grew up and I guess how you came to be part of the Moonee Valley.
Yeah, so look, I grew up on the other side of Melbourne, so born in Box Hill and moved around with Dad's work quite a lot. But I came to Moonee Valley because my wife grew up around here.
Okay.
And we decided when we went to buy a house together that this was the place to do it. And it's been a really good decision for us. And now we've had our children have grown up in Moonee Valley, and I've got my first grandchild.
Oh,
who's
wow.
Also, and they're all still stuck into Moonee Valley, which is fabulous. And you know, it's a true reflection of how nice it is to live here.
Yeah.
Because each of them has said we don't want to move away, which is fabulous for us.
No, fantastic. And SES, were you part of the SES before you came to this side of town, or is that something you got into once you moved to the Moonee Valley?
Yeah, no, it was something I got into when I moved into Moonee Valley. I guess I was looking for what can I do. So I joined SES here back in 1990.
Yeah.
And I took a break. I've been doing it now for about 24 years, but I took a break in the middle, and I was a scout leader at 15th Essendon down in Fairburn Park for about 10 years.
Yep.
So, you know, I've been part of Moonee Valley. I've been working with adult volunteers through SES and with our kids. And, you know, pleased to say that we actually got one of our volunteers who was one of my scouts during my time there, which is wonderful to see them grow and develop.
Yeah, and then join you in the SES as well.
Absolutely.
Beautiful. And Justin, yourself, talk to me about your sort of introduction to the SES and how you got involved.
Yeah, I was a big fan of the emergency services. And when I was working in real estate, well, firstly, I grew up playing football, local footy. So I'm a Doodle Stars boy, so shout out to the Doodles. And when I retired from football, I just missed the camaraderie that SES, that football had, and loved emergency services. And I thought, you know, SES are promoting good camaraderie in the group, and put my application in, and 16 years later, still a volunteer, and I actually work for them full time now.
Yeah. Right, there you go. So, and John, maybe you can explain for some of our listeners who maybe don't fully understand the SES. I'm sure most viewers will be, they'll know the term, and when there's a flood or some sort of emergency, they'll listen to the news bulletins, they'll say SES attended and all this sort of stuff. But maybe just talk through what the SES does and how people can sort of get involved.
Yeah, so from a Moonee Valley perspective, the SES is responsible for responding and providing a first responder service for natural hazards and the impacts of those natural hazards on our community. So we're talking about floods and storms, earthquakes, and some would have said we'll never have an earthquake, but we did, and we lost a lot of chimneys, particularly in that time. Sinkholes, and you might say, again, we don't have sinkholes in Moonee Valley. I can tell you there was one beside Moonee Pond Station back in New Year's Eve a few years ago, and we had a really big one down in Steel Creek. So, you know, that's where things happen. They get quite dangerous. We're also responsible for tsunami, but in sort of the Melbourne part of Victoria, we're pretty safe from that. And we assist police and fire services and ambulance with a range of other things. But it really is looking at those natural hazards.
Yeah.
And we pretend, I prefer to talk about natural hazards that cause emergencies and disasters rather than natural disasters, because the disasters are not natural.
Yeah.
It's the impact of the disaster that's the disaster part of those sort of things. And, you know, we really do look at what can we do to help our community be better prepared for that, because the best outcome for us is that more people are better prepared for those natural hazards as they come, and climate change is really going to be a challenge for us in that.
Mm.
So we need to do less for people in our community. That is our goal.
Yeah.
But it remains a challenge.
Yeah. And Justin, you mentioned now you're working with SES full time. Did you say?
Yeah, so I work SES full time as an instructor.
Yep.
So I teach all the volunteers across Western Victoria and all different roles. So I really specialise in that boat rescue. So we see the floods all over Victoria. I train the volunteers, teach them how to respond, how to get people off roofs, off cars, and so forth. Like that. So
Yeah. So the SES is a mix of obviously volunteers and obviously full time.
there's full time staff, so like in the command role.
Yeah.
So and there's trainers, so we train them all. But majority of the workforce is volunteers, and volunteers are the backbone of
Yep. And obviously there's a big day coming up to recognise volunteers. John, do you want to maybe talk me through next Wednesday?
Yeah, so look, next week is National Volunteer Week, and on Wednesday next week it's Wear Orange Wednesday. So, and that's an opportunity for us to sit back and reflect internally at the good that we've done for our community and all of the benefits that we've done, the people that we've helped along the way, because often we're looking at what's the next thing and how do we prepare for that. So it's a chance for us to take a breath.
Yeah.
But it's also a chance for the community to sort of say thank you to us. So if you know someone who's a volunteer, just say thank you. You know, the best reward for us when we're out doing a job is the people that we're helping just say thank you and appreciate what we're doing. You know, we know that for many of them, it's a really bad day, and for some of them, it's the worst day of their life. We are there trying to help them, and sometimes they're just not quite as gracious as we'd like. They do appreciate it over time, but it's a highly stressful time, and our volunteers deal with that. And you know, we really look for good interaction with our community. So it's one day of the year. You know, you can wear orange. I mean, the best thing to do is to be visible, to go to work in orange, and there's lots of ways you can do that. But say thank you to a volunteer.
Yep. And John, so you look after all the volunteers in the Essendon SES area.
Yeah.
So talk to me about what you do in terms of recruiting volunteers, in terms of keeping volunteers engaged, because I'm familiar with the challenge of finding volunteers, maybe even just in a sports club point of view, right? But this is a totally different kettle of fish. So talk to me about how you go about engaging volunteers and getting them excited about being part of the SES.
It's a really good question, and it's one that collectively volunteer organisations are challenged with. We're lucky in Moonee Valley that we have a regular people coming in saying we would like to join you. And part of our recruitment process is to have a conversation with those people to help them understand the commitment that we're after, because to train someone up to be able to do things at the technical level that we require. And Justin and I spent a lot of time building the water rescue capability in Essendon.
Yeah.
That doesn't come in 12 months. We're looking at people that have been around for 4, 5, 6, 7 years that start to build those technical rescue capabilities.
Yeah.
So it starts with a conversation around those, but it's also about us being open to people, because we all start out knowing nothing.
Yeah.
And it's bringing people in that have the best ideas. And I've got, one of our newest volunteers is a young lady. She's still trying to work out where her career goes, but she's found a home within SES that she loves. And it's, for us to watch people grow is amazing. And we ask them for a minimum expectation that they can give us 2 or 3 years of their life. If they can do that, we're really interested in what they're doing. If they've done that with us, they can then go out to their communities afterwards and their family and friends, knowing a whole lot more about how to be better prepared to reduce the impacts of natural hazards. And that's the benefit for us as well in resilience building across the community.
Yeah. And Justin, you want to talk to, I guess, your what you found in volunteering for the SES before it became sort of like a full-time role, and how you found that camaraderie you were sort of missing.
Oh, look, that camaraderie, just being part of a team. Volunteers are an amazing, I would call them the unsung heroes of their community, and people who want to learn a different skill and give back to their community, especially the best community ever in Moonee Valley, is awesome. And everyone wants to make a difference. So the egos are out the door. Everyone wants to play their part to help people in need. And that's such a rewarding to give back to give back to people in need at a crisis. If it's a flood or a storm or a tree's on their house or on their car, you see it, you feel it, but you can help, and you go home that night, you feel rewarded, and you feel you've done something different. And it's such it's such a tremendous feeling to have, and going home or going to work the next day and telling your friends and family, and they ring me and they say, "Oh, did you go to that fight?" Yeah, I was there. I was cutting down the tree. Or did you go to that crime scene out Victoria Police? Absolutely, we were there, and it's just I just can't describe it. The endorphins up, and sometimes you come home from a call out and you can't sleep for an hour because you're so pumped up, and
Yeah.
and it's just it's an amazing feeling to give back to a community.
So the SES Essendon unit, I guess, in an average, how do you measure it? Month, quarter? Like, how many call outs typically would there be?
Look, on average, we receive over 400 requests for assistance. We call them, and a year, and it depending on the disaster if it happens in the area. I remember a day, Melbourne Cup Day, where John, you've got better memory than me. I think it was around 2013, 2014 maybe. We had over 700 calls in 1 hour for Moonee Valley.
Right.
The Aberfeldy racetrack where was flooded.
Right.
I remember, and I remember this story, is I was driving down this long road in Avondale Heights, right? And everyone's seen those disaster movies where there's trees down on cars and all that sort of stuff. We're driving down. Every house had a tree down, and people were running to us as we were driving down the street, and it was so scary. And we went into this courthouse where, and I've never seen anything like it to this day, 16 years into the job, is that hail broke into the back. Was it like a group of townhouses? Hail broke into the back door, flipped a fridge in its cavity. Right. And hail was knee deep into this house, right? Never seen it. The kitchen table was in the lounge, and the lounge room, the chairs were in the hallway and in the garage. It was full. And we're there, and the team's all looking at each other going, "Oh, wow, what are we going to do?" We end up shoveling hail out of windows for 2 hours. Never seen it in my life.
Yeah.
But you know what sticks out for me? Is the lady had her baby photos in the coffee table. And we were working away, right? And she yells out the biggest scream, devastating scream I've never heard in my life, right? She lost her baby. But she kept the negatives higher, we found out later after the job. But
yeah,
it was just a job that I've never forgotten.
Yeah.
But we were there to help her when she needed it.
Yeah.
And I've never ever seen it.
Yeah. John, any jobs for you that really stand out? Like, I mean, you've been doing it for a while, so I'm sure there's a few.
There's lots of them. I guess to say a lot of our jobs come at night.
Yeah.
So we're often invisible to most of our community because they're asleep while we're doing what we do. But, to follow on from Justin's, we had another job a while ago, tree fell down in a front yard, which looked like a fairly routine job. But it fell onto a rose bush that the lady in the house had planted for her lost child. Oh. And so, we have conversations with people as we go in. So those sort of things, they stay with us and we remember them. And there was another, it was a couple of townhouses up in Airport West a year ago. We had major flooding, and the basement of this property and the neighbouring property were just full of sewage. Yeah. And we stayed there in the day for about 5 hours because the sewerage company said it's not ours. And I guess your listeners will know that you can tell sewage from normal water. But in the end, the sewage company owned up to it and they fixed it. So there's those things where they're not big for most people, but for the two residents that owned those two properties, they got rid of a sewage problem for their houses, and that is a big outcome for them. Yeah, mostly not seen by people, but appreciated by a couple of really nice families.
Yeah, and so you're obviously constantly needing to be prepared for a wide range of sort of situations that might pop up. Justin, can you talk to, I guess, because you mentioned you do a lot of the training for sort of water response and all that sort of stuff. So, what other sort of areas are you constantly training on, and how often do volunteers have to come and do training and all this sort of stuff?
So we train every Monday night at Essendon for about 2 to 3 hours, depending on the situation or what we have planned. But generally, it's just general response, so repairing doors, windows, how to cut a tree down if it's landing on a house, on a car, how to do how to do lay sandbags to protect houses from flooding, how to search for things. So if a missing person goes missing in Moonee Valley, we've got Moonee Ponds and Avondale Heights call us all the time. Evidence searches, protect evidence as well at a crime scene. So there's so much that our volunteers train for, and we spread it out over the 12 months period. Like we have December off because volunteers need a break
Yeah.
during December. It's a busy time for everyone. But we get back in there and it's just maintaining a constant rhythm during the 12 months, so they have their skill sets and they maintain their skill sets so they can come home to their families.
And the breadth of training that they need to undergo, is there like a seasonal focus depending on what part of the year we're in? This sort of event might be more likely to happen in, June to August versus what might be more common in the summer months.
Yeah, look, we do seasonal training, but we also, with our members, we have members that specialise in a range of things.
Sure.
So in the SES of old, so back when it started 50 years ago, most members did a bit of everything, but we're not really specialists in things. Now we've got people that are really getting trained up to be specialists in things that we do. In Essendon, we've got water rescue, we've got rooftop safety systems that people use when they go and repair damaged roofs, and we've got crews outside of Moonee Valley that do road crash, and we are quite technically expert at that. So, we've seen a huge evolution. But back to your question, yes, we do seasonal training and preparedness for those. And as much it's making sure that the equipment that we have and the tools that we use are ready to use. No point
'cause
having a
even
pump
that,
that's not going to work when the water goes.
Yeah.
But equally, just sort of to put to that, you might think that time for us for flooding is winter and spring. That's okay, except when a water main bursts. And water mains will burst and do burst any day of the year. So yes to seasonal, but don't believe that it's only flood season where you get a flood coming through.
Yep. And what's the local volunteer base like, just from a pure numbers point of view in our area? What sort of numbers do we have?
Oh, look, we're pretty strong in Essendon. We're around about 55, I think.
Yeah.
And we have got a waiting list as well, which is
Right.
really good. So, but people drop off during the year. So
And sorry, is the waiting list because there's a certain capacity based on how many we can train at any one time?
I think
or
that's, and where we're stationed, our facility,
how many you can look at?
look after. So, we're always looking and campaigning to our local politicians about getting money to securing a bigger facility. So we're working very closely with Danny Pearson and Ben Carroll to secure funding.
Yeah.
And so we can grow big. So at the moment we've got restrictions where we've only got one truck.
Yeah.
To support the whole Moonee Valley.
Wow.
So we've got one truck and 2 4-wheel drives. So
Yeah.
you look at it this way, Moonee Valley's got 3 police stations.
Yeah.
Great. Police officers need more stations. They need more members. They do an amazing job. Fire Rescue Victoria's got 2 stations, and Ambulance Victoria's got 2. We've got 1 to do the whole Moonee Valley.
Yeah.
So it's a bit
And
of
50 people, like, yeah.
and we could recruit another 20 or 30 and train them, but I've got 1 truck.
Yeah.
And the issue is that we're trying to, we work with Ben and Danny, we work with our counsellors, and we're trying to get out there we want to stay in our spot because we're in the heart of Moonee Valley.
Yeah.
So if a job comes in and I need to be in say, Ascot Vale, I can be there in 10 minutes. But, yeah, we're looking at, we're constantly talking to our politicians to seek further funding for an extension at our facility.
Yeah. And how has that, government support changed and evolved over the years? Obviously, funding, everyone's got their hand out for funding, but you guys play a pretty critical role, I guess, in when you really need it. How has that evolved over time since you've been in the SES?
Look, it's evolved a long way since the beginning. When SES first formed in Moonee Valley, we were down at the incinerator theatre, which was then just the incinerator.
Yeah.
And at that point, the almost total support came from Moonee Valley Council.
Right.
There was a decision of state government that would pull that back into being government supported. So Moonee Valley still supports us. We get a reasonable contribution from state government, which is not enough to provide us with all the equipment, maintain our vehicles and grow our vehicle fleet. There are, and there's been a group of volunteers pushing the Victorian state government to look at sustainable funding for SES so that our volunteers spend the time away from their families, and that's an important thing to come back to perhaps, doing the response activities, building resilience in our community rather than going out and doing fundraising. But at this point in time, there is a need for us to go out and find additional funds to make sure that we continue to grow and build capacity. And I saw just recently, the projection of population growth in Moonee Valley. I think over the next 10, 15 years, there's a 40% growth expected in people. That's a lot of people to support. And to understand, and going back to Justin's point about how many vehicles we have to respond, when you get a bushfire, it tends to happen in one place. When we get a storm that comes through Moonee Valley, we get spots coming up with requests for assistance right across the community. So it's not one place where you go and do it. We've got vehicles going everywhere from Flemington to Avondale Heights to Strathmore, we're in between.
And so with that, is it that multiple different SES branches would work together then, or would pull request resources from other?
Yeah, so depending, like Moreland might be hit with 40 or 50 jobs, so they're responding on their own. And so we got to work out. We'll go back to our bosses and go, hey, what have you got? Do we have to get them from another area, say from Eastern Metro, to come down? Because we getting jobs. We might have 3 trees on the road, so they're really priority jobs because we don't want people to crash into them. So we're responding to that, and we're trying to work out which is the most priority to go to with the truck and the four-wheel drive that we've got. So, and it's hard. And then police are out there babysitting the roads as well. So they got their jobs to help to wait for us to come cut it up. Council come out too with their contractors to cut it up. So again, when we get 700 was crazy back in that era, but if we get 40 or 50, it's a bit busy couple of days for us at Essendon.
Yeah, and I guess it wouldn't always just be the day where the event happens. There's always clean up in the days after and all that sort of stuff. Can you talk me maybe through a typical call out sort of day where there's maybe a lot of activity? I know they probably all vary quite a lot, but maybe reflect on a day or some sort of week where there was a lot of sort of follow up activity.
Yeah, look, I guess there's 2 types of call out generally to talk through. There's the events that Justin talked about where it's really big, where effectively someone's page, or all of our pages will go off. We'll follow that up, we'll get a crew in, and within 20 minutes or thereabouts, we'll have a crew on the road starting to deal with what's coming. Those crews could be out if it's one job for an hour. If not, they could be out for 8 or 9 hours. And that could be overnight, in the morning, so we're looking at fatigue. Those ones are somewhat easier to manage. The other one is, and we've had that last year, I think it was, with storms where you go out, you get a call, you get the truck out, the crew come back, they go home, another call comes in and they go in and out. So it's really quite disruptive around those. But our crews are really committed to providing support across the city. And employers, I think the difference is when there is a big event, employers are quite generous in there letting people take time off for emergency services support. State government is really good at that. Other employers, it depends on the business because sometimes you need someone there to actually keep the business running, and we understand that. But it is managing all of those things to give the support that's there. And probably just to touch on that, that means that we do go away from our families a lot. And so going back to Wear Orange Wednesday and acknowledging the volunteers, it's also about acknowledging our partners, our families, our children who give us permission to go out and do what we do, because if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't be able to go out. And they do let us go, which they are as much a part of keeping SES what it is, and CFA for that matter, as it is the volunteers themselves.
And Justin, talk to me about how you guys intersect with the emergency services, because you've mentioned a few times, like the police might call you out to sort of safeguard some evidence, or talk to me about how the different emergency service sort of interact with SES.
Oh, look, we've got a great relationship with Moonee Ponds and Avondale Heights Police. We work very closely together with the inspectors, and they call us out. So a couple of times a year they'll come and visit us. We'll show them what we can do, and we show them our equipment and our toys. And they come out and they go, all right, they know, they love what we do, and they love the extra help if we're searching for someone who's missing, or someone escaped from the old person's home or elderly home, is the correct terminology. And they help, and so they get to know us, and they come out every couple of months. They have a coffee with us. And they thank the volunteers, which is really important. And they get to know us on a name-by-name basis. And so they know they can trust us. They know we deliver a certain degree of service to help them out. And it's, you know, it helps them to move on to their next emergency.
Yeah.
Same with Ambulance Victoria down at Moonee Ponds. Emily and Brett there, great people to work with. They know what we can do. And when someone's gone on a walking track and they've done an ankle and they need to be carried out, we've got a piece of equipment called a mule. It's like a wheelbarrow with a stretcher, like that. So we put them on there, we strap them on, and we wheel them out.
Yeah.
Because, you know, it's tough. It's tough. And the AV do it a lot. And our colleagues at Fire Rescue Victoria, amazing people as well. We work with them with lighting when they have their big jobs. And the whole sector comes together for the Moonee Valley community.
Yeah.
And that's so important. We're here for them.
Yeah. And what's the balance like? So I'm sure you get called out to some situations that are really quite dangerous. And what's the balance between what you guys can do versus what you need to wait for, you know, police or fire rescue, etc., to come?
We don't go, so we've got a certain skill set that we train to.
Yeah.
We don't go out that boundary.
Yeah.
Our volunteers know we don't do it. It's not our scope of works or what we do. So they'll push it back onto, you know, if it's something very dangerous, it might be a high angle job or a building that's severely damaged, it'll go like to fire rescue.
Sure.
But I think in that, our role as an emergency responder is to make things safe.
Yeah.
Making safe doesn't mean we fix everything up.
No.
You know, if something is particularly dangerous, it might be fenced off and taped off and experts brought in to deal with that. So, you know, I think to set public expectation, we're not there to repair damage that's been done. We're there to make the area safe.
Yeah.
You know, that can be cutting up trees that have fallen down. It can be putting temporary repairs into roofs. And to try and manage that balance. But there are some times where the situation is complex, it is dangerous, shouldn't be done at night in the dark when it's wet and windy and raining. And that is for us an appropriate thing to do. So we work with all the other agencies. We all have the technical skills that we do.
Yeah.
But turning up to an emergency doesn't mean we will do anything apart from assess it. If the assessment says it's actually safer to leave it where it is and to relocate people and to keep people out of that.
Yeah. Yep. All right. So we've talked a little bit about Wear Orange Wednesday and acknowledging the volunteers. But you know, we have touched on that. There's a bit of a funds gap between what's provided by councils, state government, that sort of thing. So what does the SES do, or how can people sort of help out financially to bridge that gap? Do you guys run fundraisers, that sort of thing, or?
John, I'll leave that with you.
Look, we don't do fundraisers so much. We have done tin shakes. We're really trying to move towards getting grants and donations into our unit. You know, if people reach out to us to Essendon at ses.vic.gov.au, we can provide guidance to people on how you can do that. We're looking at we're really looking at the investment our volunteers make, and fundraising is hugely time consuming for those folks. And if we consume all of our members' time doing fundraising, their families are not going to let them go to do it. And members join us because they want to provide support to the community. They want to learn new skills. They want to use them. So it's trying to get that balance right. But, you know, we're open to suggestions. We talk with a lot of people. We look at grants because they are, say, a good return on investment. And we've had donations that have come in that we've used for particular purposes.
Sure.
It's just an ongoing challenge for us, and we understand that everybody is a little bit challenged around funding at the moment. Yeah. But you know, we as a service, Essendon is very much been part of an active engagement between the SES and the state government to try and improve the sustainability of funding. Yeah. Which means that more of our time can be spent doing things other than raising money. Yeah. That's still a work in progress.
Yeah. And what's that collaboration like between all the various chapters of the SES or units? You know, like, do you have ongoing sort of high level discussions at a higher level, like how the different units can work together and that sort of thing?
Might leave that one with John as well.
No, look, it's amazing actually.
Yeah.
You know, we work together, we share capabilities. Yeah. And you know, members from any unit will go anywhere in Victoria as the need. And Justin touched on that before.
Yeah.
I mean, when they had the big storms in the Dandenong Ranges back
Yeah.
in 2021, I think it was.
During COVID, yeah.
You know, we sent crews from right across Melbourne to support them. When we had floods in Moonee Valley, they came to us.
Yes.
So we all have as a primary responsibility a response area that we do.
Yeah.
But we all help each other around those things. We share equipment, we share people, we share training, we share just about everything that we can, because we're all here to improve the life of Victorians,
Yeah.
to deal with emergencies as they arise. And the bigger challenge for us all is how do we work, and we work closely with Moonee Valley Council, how do we build resilience to disasters, and how do we reduce the disaster risk in our community? Because those are the things that have the best return on investment, but they are the hardest thing to get people to take action on.
Yeah. So can you talk to me a little bit about, so what do you mean by that? Like the way infrastructure is built to make it more resistant to any sort of damage in a storm, or like,
Yeah,
what do you mean by that?
So some examples for that: if you're building a new property on close to a river, then we do what you do is what's referred to as raising the floor level. So you would build it so that the ground level of the building was above where you expect floods to come, and you wouldn't be putting a basement garage in, because that would become a swimming pool. It's looking at maintenance of a property. How do you maintain your property? Do you maintain your property? And what trees and things do you have around there? And we do get frustrated by properties that we get called to where a tree that's probably been dead for about 5 years has suddenly decided to fall over. And you know, those sort of things should be managed. They're routine maintenance.
Yeah.
And we do get annoyed with those. We'll turn out. We'll have
Yeah,
a look.
yeah,
We'll make sure it's safe.
Yeah.
But it's about property owners and landlords looking after the buildings that they have and thinking about where they go.
Yeah.
And I think just to look at some of the high-rise buildings in Moonee Valley, I mean, we've had some significant requests for assistance for those where some of the attachments on the outside have become loose. You know, and they are hugely dangerous. So we're looking at building design, we're looking at building maintenance, and we're looking at individuals actually looking after their own piece of that.
So town planning is part of the list as well for you guys, obviously. It's going to be very busy if these state activity centres go ahead.
Can I just say, like, to all your listeners out there, something simple you could do. We're coming up to storm season. Clean your gutters.
Yeah.
How many times I've gone out to a job and the gutter's blocked because the tennis ball's blocking the drain pipe?
So the best gutter story we had, we wasn't in Moonee Valley. We went out towards Wyndham.
Yep.
And one of the crew went up because the gutters had overflowed and there was water inside the house, and there was a weed growing out of the top of the downpipe. And they pulled this and they kept pulling and pulling and pulling. And when they put the roots next to the gutter, they went all the way from the roof to the ground.
Wow.
That weed had been growing there for a long time. And when your gutters overflow, particularly with some of the new box gutter arrangements we have, there's only one place the water's going to go, and that is into your ceiling.
Yeah.
And if it's in your ceiling, it's into your house.
John, how many times we've gone to a job like that and the ceiling, the ceiling lounge room's collapsed? It's not their TV's gone, their couch is gone. We're just scraping it up and you can see their roof tiles. It is such a common thing that happens every year. And it's simple, guys. Just clean your gutters.
Yeah.
Get the ladder up there, do it safely, clean your gutters, and you won't have that problem.
And
hopefully.
I think just to sort of continue that story, if you're looking at building a new house in Moonee Valley, have a think about how that building is going to cope with more torrential rain, because the predictions with climate change is that we will get more intense periods of rainfall. And think about what will happen if they overflow. And I think about the older style house, and fortunately I live in one of those. I've got eaves and my gutter sits separated by about 1.5 feet or half a metre from the edge of my building. So if it overflows, the water just goes onto the ground and it's a bit messy.
Yeah.
Where you've got a box gutter, the only way that they can often go is to empty into your ceiling space. So talk to your designers, talk to your builders, talk to your planners to say, okay, I know that this is a really beautiful looking property, but how would it stand up to this? And what would happen if they overflowed? Because the prevention you can do at that point, this is what we talk about risk reduction.
Yeah.
If you make it so that it is much less likely that your water will go into your ceiling, that's an awesome outcome.
Yes.
Because you won't have to worry about it.
Yeah, but it's often the last thing people are sort of thinking about with a new build or anything like that. But it's obviously a good reminder for that sort of thing. Any other sort of maintenance tips as we get closer to winter? So clean the gutters, check for dead trees. Well,
If you do have a garage that is below ground level and it has a pump in it to get water out, make sure that the pit that the water goes into is clean. Make sure that the pump is working.
Yeah.
And make sure that where the pump goes works. And we did have a call to a property that had a very nice big basement.
Yeah.
They'd done everything right and they'd put the pump, the builders had put the pump in right, but the installer had not put enough glue around some of the outflow pipes, and so they burst. So again, it's test your systems, make sure that they are there, and when they work for the first time, watch them.
Yeah.
And if there's something that you're not sure about, get the trades back and have them looked at.
Yeah, perfect. All right. And beyond signing up as a volunteer, what other practical ways can people sort of support the SES? Because you mentioned, you sort of got a waiting list to sort of join at the moment. So what are those people on the waiting list sort of doing, or can they do to sort of support what you guys are up to?
Look, we do reach out to everyone, and we do a couple of intakes per year, depending on our ratio of how many we lose. Because doing an intake is it's time-consuming, training new people to a certain level. But people out there who can support us, definitely reach out on our socials, our Facebook page, our Instagram. We always look for donations.
Yeah.
Or equipment. We don't want your second-hand couch or your second-hand telly from, you want to get rid of Goodwill, but, reach out and talk to us over our social pages, and we're looking for donations. We always upgrade our equipment. We need equipment, so we'll be able to do our job.
So what sort of things are most urgent at the moment that you'd love, if you could snap your fingers and replace or add to your list of equipment that you have? What would the top three?
So we call that John's wish list.
John's wish list. Oh, let's get into John's wish list.
I do have a wish list. Like we need to increase the number of vehicles that we have.
Yeah.
But to do that, I need to increase the storage facility we have for vehicles. And we have a very nice building, but when it was originally built back in 2000, late 90s, and opened in 2000, it was architect designed, and the front door, the opening is not big enough to put in some of our new vehicles. Right. So there's some work that needs to be done.
So where do they stay?
We don't have them. So at the moment we have aging vehicles.
Yes.
But we've got a trailer, we call it a storm trailer, that we can attach to the back of a four-wheel drive, to replace that with a light rescue vehicle, which is something that's approved but unfunded at the moment. The cost to us of that is in excess of $300,000.
Right.
And there are grant programs that can support us with that, but for us to put into that program, we need to have at least $100,000 of unit funds to make that happen. Okay. So that's the big ticket item.
Yeah.
And other than that, it's really just making sure that we have enough of the things that we need. So chainsaws, pumps, lighting, and we're starting to see a real evolution into battery-powered equipment.
Yeah.
And so, the equipment we have on our vehicles changes.
Yeah.
Those are the sorts of things that are important to us right now.
Yeah.
And there's just regular maintenance, because every time you get a new piece of equipment, there is a cost to maintain it, to support it. And our rescue vehicles require a truck license to do that. So we need to fund the truck license. They're not cheap for our drivers as well. Yeah.
And are there any other sort of local collaborations that go on with things like the men's shed or anything like that? Do they ever, is there any involvement with things like that? Or
look, the men's shed has built us a little kids truck.
Yeah.
So when we do our community education displays up at Airport West, they have an emergency service day. So everyone comes out, they jump into that. They, it has a siren and all that sort of stuff. We bring our boat out. We've worked well with them in the past, but we also worked well. Like I got to shout out to our councillors, Ava, Sam, Johnny Barnes, Councillor Isla Rose. I remember there's a few of them there. There's a few new ones. Great supporters of us. They come out, and when a big storm happens, I let them know what's going on in their community. So I'll say, look, Essendon's had 40 jobs overnight. I give them a breakdown. They come to our training on the Monday and they bring us food and say thank you.
Yeah.
So, and even our politicians, Danny, Ben, they come out big supporters as well. So shout out to them for constant checking in and supporting us during the last couple of years.
Yep. And what about other sort of local, like the sports club? How can they maybe get involved and support you guys? Like whether it's just raising awareness for what you do, or
I mean, it's a really good question. We don't have good engagement with those at the moment. A lot of most organisations that are run by volunteers like ourselves, Nidwood football clubs and all the sports clubs that are flat out looking after their own thing.
Yeah,
And one of the things, if you sort of dream and say, what does it look like? In the ability of sports clubs to become engaged in disaster recovery, so this is municipality wide, is awesome because they have, if there's an evacuation, they have change rooms, they have facilities, they have catering, they have people. There's lots of ways that we can engage those, and they're the sorts of things that we work with Moonee Valley City Council in the Municipal Emergency Management Planning Committee, which now has we've invited a couple of community members to be part of that.
Yeah.
So that's the group that says, how do we best engage those folks into it, because they are organised, they're together, they know each other, and they can do things quite quickly. We think.
Yeah.
So again, if sports clubs are interested in being part of that, reach out, because there's a great conversation to be had.
Yeah.
And there's a great role for that, because we're not creating new entities to do things. We're making really good use of people that are already part of our community and doing things for us.
No, perfect. All right. Well, we normally wrap up these episodes with getting some of our favourite spots around the Moonee Valley. So
I've actually got a list for
you've
this.
got a
Matt.
list.
I've got a list, Matt.
I knew you'd come prepared.
Come on, mate. I've got a list. Moonee Valley is the hot spot for good coffee and good
That's
food.
it. Well, normally I start with your favourite cup of coffee in the Moonee Valley, and most people give me at least 3. So do you have one, or are you going to give me a smorgasbord?
You know what? But it's pronouncing the name is hard. How do you pronounce that?
Pane Pizzico in
in this
North Essendon.
North
yes,
Essendon.
yeah.
Oh, I love
Opposite
going there.
the Coles.
Coles,
Yeah.
Shout out to them for the amazing coffee.
Yeah.
And
Good
going
selection
there,
of pastries and stuff in there too, huh?
Yeah, good selection, but it's just a
Focaccia,
warm feeling when
yeah.
I walk in. And my other favourite would be Lennox Deli in Moonee Ponds.
Okay.
Have you been there?
I haven't been to that one, so
It's
I'm gonna have to add
opposite
that
the
to my
primary
list.
school.
Yeah.
Shout out to the chef there. Great paninis, great coffee, and great Biscoff slices as well. So
Beautiful. John?
Yeah. So I'll start by saying, from an SES perspective, most of the coffee shops are shut when we finish. So anyone that does a 24-hour really nice coffee, I'm up for it. But for me, there's a couple around our unit. There's the Aberfeldy Silla Maria in Tilbury Street.
Yep.
Really nice spot.
that's a good spot. That.
It is a good spot. And Darling Street Espresso in Moonee Ponds.
Okay.
They are places that I will go to regularly.
Regularly.
And my daughter has bought a house not too far from Darling Street Espresso, so now that's a bit of a worry.
Yes, you'll be
I'll
spending a bit of money
I'll
there.
Be there
That's
way
good.
too often.
That's great. Do you have a favourite dinner spot in the Moonee Valley?
Oh, I have a couple.
Yeah, that's all right. List them. Give them a shout out.
Carosellos, Moonee
Yeah.
Ponds.
Can't beat Carousel.
Can't
Very
be.
good.
Oh, the ragu there is amazing.
Yeah.
And Hugo's is good.
Yes.
That's my go-to.
There you'll go to. Yeah.
So I'd say up in Rose Street in Essendon, it's the wine bar. And I
Oh,
can't
yeah.
remember the name of it. Is it Last Stop?
the one
Last
on the
stop. The
left.
last stop.
Last Stop
Yep,
Wine
yep,
Bar.
yep, yep.
It is a favourite for the family in there.
Yeah. For the food or the wine or both?
Everything.
Everything.
Just the feel, the vibe,
Nah,
the
it's
food.
good, it's good in there.
It's nice, it's casual,
Yep.
great staff,
Yeah.
good memories.
Perfect. And is there a favourite sort of local hangout in the area? Do you still frequent the Do the Stars on a match day? You go check it out, or
Oh no, I haven't for a while, but I've got a 2-year-old son, and and so it's parks for me. So it's good spot for me. I got them down at Woodlands Park.
Yep.
But my son's new favourite is the new park near the soccer club. Woodlands,
Cross Keys?
Cross Keys.
Yeah.
Seen that park?
I spend a lot of time there. Yes.
Oh, you're at the soccer club?
yeah.
Oh, that
Very
place.
good. My kids love it too.
Yeah, like my son just goes nuts. I can just have a coffee and just.
I think we spend more time at the playground than they do on the field, to be honest. But, yeah.
But that's a great place.
Yeah. No, very good. Yourself?
Yeah. Look, probably around Fairburn Park and along the river. We were down there on for Mother's Day with my daughter and my wife. And just you go down there and you just feel like you're away from everything. The amount of birds you hear singing is amazing. And in my scout life, we actually did some tree planting down there, and my daughter was part of that. And to go back and say, those little things we planted?
Yeah.
They're those really big trees that are there now.
Yeah,
It's sort of an
yeah.
amazing thing,
Yeah.
because it takes a long time to do that. But when you go back and look at it, and it really is a nice place, and there's the people down there are fabulous.
Yep.
It's just a nice place to go.
Nah, fantastic. Well, guys, thank you so much for coming in and sharing a bit more with our audience about the SES and how we can get involved and support. Guys do absolutely amazing work. We'll get this out before Wear Orange Wednesday, so hopefully everyone gets on board and wears some orange and shows up for the wonderful work that you guys do. Anything else that our listeners need to know before we wrap?
Look, National Volunteers Week next week, and this country is based on volunteering, and it's the backbone of every community, especially regional Victoria as well. So a shout out to everyone listening at your podcast. If you know a volunteer, get out your phone, send them a text and say thank you. If they're on social media, just say thanks for what you do. Thanks for making a difference. Especially if you know an SES volunteer.
Yeah.
Pick up the phone and say thank you verbally.
They get a call.
Or a social media post, because SES volunteers are the backbone of the community, and I reckon they're the unsung heroes.
Yeah.
And everyone who puts on oranges makes a difference.
Yeah.
So shout out Wednesday next week, important day for SES volunteers and all the businesses out there. If you want to get behind SES, reach us on our social media page. We will talk about how you can support us moving forward in 2025, because we're here for the Moonee Valley community.
Beautiful. And that social media page is just SES Essendon, or?
Yeah, it's SES Essendon, Facebook.
Yeah, can I just add, if people in the community can just do some volunteering of their own. If you've got a parent, an elderly aunt and uncle, someone in your family, we get a lot of calls to people who are older in our community, whose family are busy, perhaps they don't have family, and their properties are deteriorating at a significant rate. Reach up, step out, help them out. You can volunteer. That's really informal, but the benefit to them is amazing. They get company, but they also get some work done, so that it's less likely that they'll need to call us or somebody else when something goes wrong with their property. So, volunteering is not hard.
Yes.
It can be as simple as going and visiting your parents and saying, "Oh, can I clean your gutters today?" Or "Can I get someone to do that for you? Can I clean out your drains?"
Yeah.
Talk to your neighbour.
Yeah.
All of those things. That is volunteering at its heart. It doesn't have to be the formal stuff that we do.
I love it, because it's just the backbone of community. The Moonee Valley's so good at it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Look, this is a great part of Melbourne. I think people have now discovered Moonee Valley is a great part of the Melbourne, which is a bit disappointing. But we can make it great. We can make it a place to live. We can make it a really safe place from our perspective, from a natural hazards perspective.
Yeah.
Let's do everything that we can to make this a place that people want to come and feel safe walking around.
Nah, perfect. Well, guys, thanks again for all the work that you do, all the volunteering, everyone in your units that you look after, that you train. It's super appreciated. So again, all the listeners, make sure you're wearing orange on Wednesday, and be sure to stay tuned for another episode of Moonee Valley Voices to come. Thank you.